Everything has to be paid for. In April 2003, the Iraq Museum in Baghdad was looted. An estimated 15,000 artifacts disappeared in a single week, pieces spanning 5,000 years of Mesopotamian civilization. The FBI later valued the stolen collection at over $1.7 billion. But that figure captures only what was taken. It does not capture what was destroyed. It does not capture the tourism revenue Iraq will never earn. It does not capture the decades of academic and economic potential locked inside objects that no longer exist. Cultural heritage is not a museum problem. It is an economic asset, one that conflicts destroy systematically, irreversibly, and at almost no cost to the side doing the destroying. This episode examines how the destruction of cultural heritage functions as an economic weapon, why the losses compound across generations, and what happens to an economy when its deepest assets are erased. Some things cannot be rebuilt, only the cost can be calculated. What cultural heritage is worth economically? Cultural heritage is not sentiment. It is a productive asset with measurable economic output. Tourism built on historical sites, museums, and archaeological zones generates revenue that functions as a permanent, self-renewing income stream, unlike oil or minerals which deplete over time. The World Tourism Organization and UNCTAD have documented the economic contribution of cultural tourism across conflict-affected regions. Pre-conflict Syria attracted approximately 8 million tourists annually, generating an estimated $4 billion to $6 billion in tourism revenue. The majority of this revenue was directly tied to Syria's archaeological and historical sites: Palmyra, Damascus, Aleppo, the Dead Sea Scrolls region. These sites were not just attractions, they were economic engines. Iraq's cultural tourism sector prior to 2003 was significantly underdeveloped relative to its potential. The World Bank estimated that Iraq's archaeological assets, the largest concentration of ancient civilization sites in the world, could generate between $2 billion and $5 billion annually in tourism revenue under stable conditions and proper management. In 2003, that potential was not realized. It was actively destroyed. The Iraq Museum and the cost of looting. The looting of the Iraq Museum in Baghdad in April 2003 remains one of the largest single losses of cultural heritage in modern history. According to UNESCO tracking data, approximately 15,000 artifacts were stolen or destroyed during and after the looting. The FBI's Cultural Property Crime Unit estimated the value of stolen items at over $1.7 billion. But valuation of cultural artifacts is inherently incomplete. Unique, irreplaceable objects do not have market prices in the conventional sense. Their economic value lies in what they enable: research, tourism, national identity, educational infrastructure, not in what a collector might pay at auction. The $1.7 billion figure captures black market and auction potential. It does not capture the permanent reduction in Iraq's cultural tourism capacity, estimated by the World Bank at $500 million to $1 billion in foregone annual revenue over the following decade. They said, the looting was a security failure that could be corrected through recovery efforts and international cooperation. They got a recovery rate below 50% as of 2020, according to UNESCO monitoring. The majority of stolen artifacts entered unregulated international markets and effectively disappeared from Iraq's economic and cultural base permanently. ISIS and the systematic destruction of Palmyra. The looting of the Iraq Museum was opportunistic. The destruction carried out by ISIS across Syria and Iraq between 2013 and 2017 was systematic. ISIS deliberately targeted archaeological and historical sites, not for looting alone, but for destruction as ideological theater. The economic consequences, however, were identical regardless of motive. Palmyra, one of the most significant archaeological sites in the ancient world and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, sustained catastrophic destruction under ISIS occupation in 2015 and 2016. The Temple of Bel, the Temple of Baal Shamin, and the ancient triumphal arch were destroyed or severely damaged. According to assessments by the Smithsonian Cultural Rescue Initiative and ASOR, the American Schools of Oriental Research, at least 50% of Palmyra's ancient structures sustained significant damage or total destruction. The reconstruction cost for Palmyra alone is estimated at $1 billion to $1.5 billion, according to Syrian government figures and independent engineering assessments. But reconstruction of physical structures does not restore economic function. Tourism revenue depends not only on the existence of sites, but on their authenticity, completeness, and the narrative surrounding them. A reconstructed Palmyra is not the same economic asset as the original. Visitor numbers, ticket prices, and the site's capacity to anchor a broader Syrian tourism ecosystem are all permanently reduced. The Aleppo calculation. Aleppo represents the largest single urban heritage loss of the Syrian conflict. The old city of Aleppo, a UNESCO World Heritage Site containing mosques, markets, and residential architecture dating back thousands of years, sustained destruction estimated at 60% to 80% of its historic core between 2012 and 2016, according to UN Satellite Center imagery analysis and ASOR cultural heritage initiatives. The economic scale of this loss is significant. Pre-conflict, Aleppo's old city contributed an estimated $200 million to $400 million annually to Syria's tourism sector. The site attracted visitors from across Europe and the Middle East. Restoration estimates run between $800 million and $1.2 billion for physical reconstruction alone, and even complete physical restoration would not immediately restore visitor flows or tourism revenue. They said post-conflict reconstruction would restore Syria's cultural tourism sector within a decade. They got a heritage destruction so extensive that UNESCO placed multiple Syrian sites on its endangered list, with full restoration timelines estimated at 15 to 25 years and no guarantee of equivalent economic output. The black market and the diaspora of artifacts. Conflict does not only destroy cultural heritage, it disperses it. The black market in looted artifacts from Iraq, Syria, and other conflict zones generates billions in transactions, but none of that revenue returns to the origin country's economy. The European Union's External Action Service estimated that the illegal trade in Syrian antiquities generated between $200 million and $500 million annually at peak periods between 2014 and 2016. Interpol and the FBI have tracked artifacts from Iraqi and Syrian sites appearing in auction houses, private collections, and online markets across Europe, the United States, and the Gulf states. This represents a permanent economic extraction from conflict zones. Assets that once anchored domestic tourism, education, and cultural identity are converted into private wealth elsewhere. The origin country receives nothing. The diaspora of artifacts is irreversible. Recovered pieces represent a fraction of what was removed, and even recovered artifacts require years of legal proceedings before they can be returned. The generational calculation. Cultural heritage destruction is not a one-time loss. It is a permanent reduction in an economy's asset base. Tourism revenue is self-renewing. A functioning archaeological site generates income every year, indefinitely, with minimal extraction cost. Destroying it eliminates not 1 year of revenue, but every year of revenue that would have followed. For a site like Palmyra, which could have generated $100 million to $200 million annually in a stable Syrian tourism economy, the present value of lost future revenue, discounted over a 50-year horizon, exceeds $2 billion from a single site. Across all destroyed or severely damaged sites in Syria and Iraq, the World Bank's Cultural Heritage Impact Framework estimates cumulative lost tourism potential at $15 billion to $25 billion over a 20-year horizon. This figure does not include the loss of educational infrastructure, research capacity, or national identity, all of which carry their own economic consequences that are measurable but rarely quantified. They said, cultural heritage sites are symbolic assets with limited direct economic relevance compared to industrial or energy infrastructure. They got a permanent reduction in tourism capacity worth tens of billions, a black market extraction of $200 million to $500 million annually, and an irreversible loss of economic assets that took millennia to accumulate and seconds to destroy. The education and research collapse. Cultural heritage destruction does not only eliminate tourism revenue, it severs the connection between a civilization and its own history, and that severance has measurable economic consequences for education, research, and national identity infrastructure. Museums and archaeological sites function as the foundation of academic research programs, university curricula, and national educational systems. When the Iraq Museum was looted, ongoing research projects were disrupted, academic partnerships were suspended, and educational programs that depended on physical artifacts lost their primary source material. The cost of rebuilding an academic research ecosystem around cultural heritage, recruiting scholars, re-establishing partnerships, reconstructing research methodologies, runs into hundreds of millions over a decade, according to UNESCO's Cultural Recovery Cost frameworks. The broader implication is structural. Countries whose cultural heritage has been destroyed lose a long-term competitive advantage in academic tourism, cultural diplomacy, and educational prestige. These advantages compound over decades and generate economic returns that no single budget line captures, but that disappear permanently when the underlying assets are gone. The long account. A factory can be rebuilt, a power plant can be replaced. Even a city, given enough time and capital, can be reconstructed. But a 4,000-year-old temple cannot be rebuilt. It can be imitated. It can be approximated. But the original, the asset that carries the weight of history, authenticity, and cultural significance, is gone forever. The economic value of cultural heritage is invisible in most conflict cost analyses. It does not appear in defense budgets. It does not feature in reconstruction planning at the scale it deserves. But it is real, it is measurable, and it is permanent in a way that almost no other form of conflict damage is. Iraq lost $1.7 billion in artifacts in a single week. Syria lost heritage worth tens of billions in tourism potential over 5 years, and neither country will recover this asset base in any human time frame. The destruction was cheap. The cost is generational. This is not about monuments. This is about the long-term economic infrastructure of civilizations and how conflict eliminates it at almost zero cost to the side doing the destroying. Subscribe to The Price of Conflict, because some costs are measured not in years but in millennia.